Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Beyond the Surface. My name is Caroline, and I'm super grateful that you're joining me today for a very interesting episode about a topic that I'm very passionate about: the link between ADHD and PMDD, also known as premenstrual dysphoric disorder, also known as a severe form of PMS. I'm passionate about this subject because it's something I've experienced myself. It's something I have written a book about. The book is almost finished at the time of recording, so that's very exciting. But the reason I want to talk about the link between ADHD and PMDD is because it's a subject that's not talked about often enough. When I learned about ADHD, which is only this year, I had no idea about the link between PMDD and ADHD. And it turns out if you have both conditions, the symptoms get amplified by one another. So that explains why every month, guaranteed, there is the perfect storm in my house. So if you are someone that struggles with severe hormone fluctuations, suffers from feelings like anxiety and depression, as well as struggle with inattention, a lack of focus, or sudden emotional outbursts, and just emotional dysregulation, you might find this episode very interesting. In this episode, I'll be talking about my own journey, my own experience, as well as I'll try and explain a little bit of the science behind it. Even though I'm still learning about all of this myself, I want to share with you what I've learned, and then I'll talk about the things that have worked for me and that have helped me. Now, before we get started, always consult your healthcare provider for anything that you decide to do. During my episodes, I talk about certain supplements and certain habits that have worked for me. Know that these are my personal experience, and this is something that has worked for me. I am all about holistic health, taking into account the body, mind, and spirit, meaning that I don't necessarily rely on drugs. I don't like medication because I believe that the body is a miracle, in the sense that if there is a deficiency in the body will show that to you. And that's what I want to talk about today: root cause testing and addressing the nutritional deficiencies within your body, because that's something that I did. But before we dive deeper, let's talk about what is ADHD. You might get, a picture coming to your mind about the little boy in the classroom that can't sit still. That is the typical picture of ADHD that many women have. And that is one of the reasons why it's so hard for women to get diagnosed with ADHD. I'm 35 and I self-diagnosed with ADHD this year when I was reading Dr. Gabor Mate's book, Scattered Minds, which is a brilliant read. If you're interested, I would highly recommend it. But what I wanted to say with that is ADHD in women presents very differently compared to ADHD in children. In children, it might be that they cannot focus for long periods of time, they cannot sit still, they're scatterbrains and their attention goes from this topic to the next topic. Now, in my case, and in the case of many other women, my attention is very scattered. But if there is something that I'm very passionate about, such as talking about this subject or writing my book or doing exercise, I can hyperfocus, meaning I can focus uninterruptedly for a long period of time. And then I actually really struggle to disconnect from that which I'm working on. So in women, ADHD can also present itself in things such as emotional dysregulation. And that's something I have struggled with and I'm still struggling with to this day. First, I just thought I didn't have an emotional IQ. Maybe I wasn't educated well enough on that subject. But it turns out that because I have such a short fuse, going from 1 to 10 is not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For me, it's 1 to 10 in an instant. And I've tried to work on this with my psychologist. And back then, a couple of years ago, we weren't aware of the fact that I had ADHD, because I would have never, ever picked up a book about ADHD because, sure, I wasn't the little boy in the classroom that couldn't sit still. I definitely didn't have ADHD as far as I was concerned, until I read the book, because I love Dr. Gabor Mate's work, and I've read his book, Hold On to Your Kids, which is about attachment theory and about nurturing your children. And that's a book that I listened to when I became a mother. So naturally, I picked up his other book because it had such a beautiful cover. And I read the book, and funnily enough, it resonated with me so deeply that it was actually a true revelation for me to learn that I did indeed have ADHD. A couple of things that came forward for me was that I struggle with emotional dysregulation. I have intense feelings of not being good enough. My psychologist asked, not good enough for whom? I don't know. I just have this innate feeling of whatever I do, no matter how many followers I get, no matter how many videos I do, no matter how much I produce or how much I write on my to-do list that I use. And yes, I use a pen and paper to-do list. No matter what I do or write down, it never feels like I'm doing enough. And it always feels like I'm measuring up against somebody that's not even using my ruler. So, needless to say, that's something that weighs very heavy on me. And logically, I'm aware of it. Logically, I understand, but I still have that innate feeling. One of the ways I heal that is by looking at You Are Enough meditations, for example, which is one of the reasons why I have created a guided meditation with You Are Enough as a reminder to myself and to many other people out there that you are enough just as you are. That's just a few symptoms of ADHD. Then let's talk about what is PMDD. PMDD is like a severe form of PMS, premenstrual syndrome. PMDD stands for premenstrual dysphoric disorder. Premenstrual meaning that it happens pre your menstrual cycle. Dysphoric meaning it's something that's really, really big. And a disorder, it's just something that is out of order. So with PMDD, it generally happens that as the hormones drop, as you come closer to your period, the brain is so sensitive to those hormone fluctuations that all sorts of funny things can happen, such as feelings of anxiety, depression, brain fog, physical symptoms such as breast tenderness, feeling bloated, achy and pain, not having energy, changes in appetite, maybe eating much more or eating much less, or having certain cravings. The thing is with PMDD, it gets amplified if you have ADHD. So in my personal journey, I found out about my ADHD as an adult at age 35 this year. I had no idea that I was struggling with symptoms of ADHD. I had no idea for years, up until now. And I'm diagnosed as an adult. And then the question is, should you get a formal diagnosis? Yes or no? Well, that is only a question that you can answer because you know your body the best. And you have different values than what I may have. For me, for example, it's important to look at the body, mind, and spirit as a whole, looking at a holistic healing solution for me. So if you're looking to get a medical diagnosis and to get professional help from a psychiatrist, a psychologist, or an obs and gynae, it would be very helpful indeed to get a medical diagnosis from your healthcare professional. They use something like the DSM-5, the Diagnostics Manual for Mental Health. And in that, I can't remember which year, but it's only quite recently, I actually have a look now, that PMDD was actually entered into the DSM-5. So PMDD was only formally recognized in the Diagnostics and Statistics Manual of Mental Health Disorders, DSM-5, in 2013. So that's quite recent, but it also goes to show that it's not just me or it's not just a few other people in the world. It is millions of women in the world that are affected by this. So there's a 2008 studies by Yonkers et al. They say that there's an estimated 5 to 8% of menstruating women worldwide who are suffering from PMDD and severe complexity of that condition. But that obviously doesn't include the women that get misdiagnosed. That doesn't include the women that don't go and seek help because they mightn't even realize that they have PMDD because they might put it under the banner of, I'm just tired. I'm trying to manage a household of kids. I'm trying to manage a really stressful job. And, maybe they just assume it's part of being a woman because that's what I did. But then what I started to do is I started to track my patterns. I've used a couple of different apps. I'm using Day One app, which is a digital journaling app, which I can use on my Mac. I can use it on my phone. I also use an actual hard copy journal to write in. So I'll write down, what day of my cycle it is, and I'll write down the symptoms. There's also a really good app called Effecto, which is very good for tracking your ADHD symptoms. When I started tracking those symptoms, all of a sudden things became clear, and it was like an aha moment for me. And that's when I slowly learned that ADHD and PMDD are linked together. And it was just so good learning about that, because it turns out I'm not crazy. I might be a little bit crazy, but it turns out there's actually a scientific reason that all this perfect storm is happening every single time, guaranteed. Often during the luteal phase of my cycle, my ADHD symptoms would feel out of control. My executive function was just like completely switched off, not even like a little bit turned on like it is usually, but it was just completely not present. I'd have really bad brain fog. I'd just be super forgetful. I couldn't be motivated to do anything. I'd really have to like push myself to go to the gym. And those things are not good. They're not good for me. They're not good for my family, and not good for trying to, do work and trying to be a reliable person in the workforce. Or even if you're an entrepreneur and you work for yourself, it's really hard during that phase to stay motivated and get shit done. It was almost as if my brain was like in overdrive, yet I was stuck in quicksand. So if you're nodding along and you're thinking, yep, that sounds like me, well, turns out you're not alone. So what is the science behind the link between ADHD and PMDD? Even though research is still emerging on this topic because it is quite new, it's only now that, women are starting to actually voice what they're feeling, and that those feelings are validated. And that's why only, there's some recent studies that have come out. And one of the things is that both ADHD and PMDD, they're linked to brain chemistry. So if things are out of balance, if your inflammation's high, if you're struggling with hormonal fluctuations, which is what happens during the luteal phase, it just creates the perfect storm. All right, let's talk about managing ADHD and PMDD. And this is my journey. This is what worked for me. And this is something that resonates deeply with me personally, obviously, which is why I've taken this approach. What works for you might be completely different, but the reason I'm sharing this is because I want more women to become aware of the link between ADHD and PMDD, and also for you to understand that if there's a tiny little voice inside of you, that's called your intuition, if that's saying to you, no, I don't want medication, that's okay. That's completely okay, because there are other ways to look at managing symptoms and healing the deficiencies in your body. So what I did, one of the biggest things is, a couple of years ago, I did a DNA test, and we talked about this in the previous episode 1. And then recently this year, I did a DNA test with a different company because over time, the DNA tests have become more available, as well as the types of tests have improved, meaning that the sequencing machines can now actually test for many more different things, which has been so helpful for me in learning and understanding about inflammation in my body, detoxification in my body, as well as the nutritional deficiencies. So after doing my genetic test, I became aware of a few things that I needed to address. One of them was detoxification. There's a phase 1 and a phase 2 detoxification that happens in your body. And in my case, it turns out that both those phases are affected. What I need to do with that is limit my environmental exposure to lots of toxic things. So I'm trying to only drink from glass or aluminium. I'm trying to reduce all the environmental factors of toxins, including microplastics, including char-grilled foods, including toxic fumes from petrol and filling up and all that stuff. So I don't fill up anymore. I either get my husband to fill up or, get the fuel to come to the house, whichever situation works best. But I've decided to step away from as many things as I can to make sure my health is not affected as much. All I try and do is just manage what's within my control. That's a metaphor for life, because that's not just with regards to what's in my environment, but mentally also trying to think of what is it that I can do about myself and about the thoughts I choose. But anyway, that's going down a rabbit hole too deep, too far. Another thing I talked about is inflammation. That is something that's been super interesting because I found a couple of research studies talking about that when you reduce the sugars in your diet, when you reduce processed foods, there is evidence that those things actually help reduce the symptoms of both ADHD and PMDD. So it turns out I need to supplement my body with inflammation. So what I do is I take an omega-3 fish oil with a 1200 milligram EPA and a 900 milligram DHA. So I take 3 capsules a day, and that has significantly helped my body. On top of that, one of the major things that came to the forefront was the MTHFR gene. And I think I briefly touched about that in the other episode. It's not the motherfucker gene, it's the methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase, I think it is. So methylation is something that happens in our body every day. It happens like hundreds of thousands of times a day in our body. And it's a process that basically says, okay, this needs to go there, that needs to go there. So basically when vitamin B comes into my body, it says do this. But in my case, that MTHFR gene is switched on in a slightly different way. So that actually means that my body cannot use a normal standard vitamin B. So even though I did supplement with a multivitamin previously, that vitamin B did not do nothing because my body could not absorb that version. So what I'm doing now, I'm taking a methylated version of vitamin B12, methylcobalamin also known as. So that's something you can look at doing as well. So I think it's Gary Brecker who said that there are 40% of people in the world that are affected by the MTHFR gene, the alterations or the defect, I should say. Even though I wasn't able to find that study, I do believe that from the clients that we worked with in our clinic, that at least 40% of people, so less than half, but a fair amount of people do have the MTHFR gene variation. So what that means is either you can take a methylated B, or you can spend $450 on a DNA test. So that's up to you. You can either spend, $40, $50, $60 on a good methylated B, and I'll put my recommendations down in the show notes, or you can do a DNA test. Now, if you really want to focus on your health and your longevity, and you've got the money to do that, I definitely recommend you do a DNA test, because the thing is, you do it once, your genes don't change. So for me, it was a super helpful tool, and I'm very grateful I was in a position to do that. And we even did a test on my 2.5-year-old daughter, which has been super helpful in supplementing her correctly from the start as well, in order to give her the best start in life and give her all the nutrients that she needs in order to grow. And that's not guesswork. That's not giving her sugary gummies. That's about genetics and nutrigenomics, focusing on the nutrients that we can help within her environment in order to give her the best health that's available to her. So that's enough about root cause testing and about the supplements that I've taken. I take a lot of other supplements on top of that, including a DIM supplement, a supplement to help with estrogen detoxification. So either you can take lots of greens, lots of broccoli and kale every day, but I struggle to eat that daily. I try my best, 3-4 times a week, but not every day. So in order to have my sort of health insurance, I take a supplement for that. And once again, I'll link that in the show notes. Another supplement that has really helped both my ADHD and PMDD is, I think it's 600 milligrams of ashwagandha, which is a natural adaptogen. Adaptogen meaning that it's a supplement that naturally adapts to your stress levels. So I take it if I have a really big day ahead, I'll take it during the day, but generally I take it about 4 o'clock. And that's one of the things I'll do. I'll set a reminder on my phone. And that's another really good tool, setting reminders on your phone. If you have ADHD, I'll put the washing in and 9 out of 10 times I forget about it. So what I do now, as soon as I put the washing in, I say, hey Siri, set a timer. And that's really helpful for me. So reminders is your ultimate go-to, as well as using calendars. Like in our family, we use a shared calendar to manage. I put in when my period's due, I put in that we shouldn't schedule big events. And that actually comes down to the topic of cycle syncing. So we've talked about supplements. Now we talk about cycle syncing. Cycle syncing has been something that's been really helpful for me and for my family. When I first read about cycle syncing, I had no idea that it could be that powerful. It was really just a mindset switch. And cycle syncing is syncing your work, your activities, and your events and social outings and your workouts to your cycle. So basically, in my book, I write about it as well. There are 4 phases of your menstrual cycle. And for each phase, you can do different activities. And there's an app you can use as a paid app called Lively. It's got that sort of icon, like a wave icon. And it tells you during each phase of your cycle what to eat, what to exercise, what to do, what to focus on. So for example, I know that when I have my period, for me, there's a relief, like my period started. Yes, I can, the brain fog starts to clear, can start to feel great again. But I do know that during ovulation, I can be very, creative. And obviously, your sex drive might be very different compared to when you are entering your luteal phase, like, week 3 or 4 of your cycle. And keep in mind that not everyone's the same. You might see, different patterns, but everyone's different and everyone's journey is uniquely different. So keep that in mind when you, listen to things like this, or when you look at advice. Always do what works best for you and listen to your body. And that's why it's so important to note down what's happening in your cycle. But cycle syncing has been super helpful because I put in the calendar, we have a shared calendar, which is really helpful. So my husband and I know which activities are when can I expect him home, when's he not home, when's he going to be late, or when's my cycle due, when, I put in the whole week of my luteal phase, I'll put a funny emoji in. So do not book any social events for Caroline because I just can't handle it. I'm not in the right mood. I can't do it. I remember prior to me starting my supplementation according to my DNA, I had to drive somewhere and it was the luteal phase of my cycle and I just struggled so much. I think I missed like 4 exits in a row. I just could not manage it. I struggled with merging on the road. I struggled with following direction, and it was too much overwhelm. I couldn't deal with it. And at the end of the day, I just pulled over and I cried. That's how serious it was. And that's when I realized, like, things have to change. I can't keep living like this for the rest of my life. Half of my life, 2 weeks of the month, I was in disarray. I wanted to hide under a rock. I didn't want to be here. I didn't have, suicidal thoughts or anything like that, but I just wanted to hide under a rock. I didn't want to interact with anyone because there was too many triggers. But anyway, that's in the past now. And all those things have taught me so much about myself, about who I am, about my needs, about meeting my own needs and what that actually means, what it means to look at your emotions and just really focusing on self-care and self-development. So all in all, it's been an absolute difficult, painful, emotional, but very rewarding journey because of it, I'm a better person and I'm sharing this story with you, which I never thought I would, and I never thought I'd be this passionate about it. But I do know what it's like to suffer from this, which is why I'm so passionate about sharing it. So with regards to managing your symptoms, we've spoken about the supplements, root cause testing and the supplements, spoken about the cycle syncing, and then the third and final topic which I want to talk about is exercise. The reason I want to talk about exercise is not because I'm a personal trainer, but because I know the science behind it. Studies have shown that exercise does improve your symptoms of ADHD and PMDD. So I've set a rule for myself, and this is what works for me. You might be different. I don't go 24 hours without exercise. I go to the gym to do a weights workout at least 3 to 4 times a week, at least 3. And I've written, it's not this booklet, but I have another booklet in which I write my exercises. So I know there's apps to track everything, but one of the things I found super distracting for me when I'm training is sitting on my phone. And when I look around the gym, nearly every other woman in the gym sits on their phone. And that's not productive, not for me. For me, what I've learned is that I need to put my phone on silent mode so I don't get notifications about what calendar events are coming up, or whether my husband has added a new event to the calendar, or whether, I'll just quickly check Instagram. That's not productive for me. My workouts, I write them down. I have 3 workouts I go through. Back and biceps is one workout. Chest, shoulders, and triceps is the other workout. And then legs and glutes and calves is the other workouts. Then generally I'll throw in one other workout, which is a cardio-based workout or a nice stretch and mobility workout. And then at the end of each of those workouts, I'll do a little bit of ab work, some planks, some sit-ups, or, what's the one where you just I'm a PT, I should know. You put your arms in and your legs go up and down. Anyway, actually, I also do bird dogs, which are super good, as well as bear crawls, super good for the core. Anyway, that's just the reason I write down my workouts is because it works for me, because it gives me something to focus on when I'm training instead of just sitting on my phone. Because if you have an app on your phone, you are more inclined to open up Instagram or another app that's going to be unproductive for you. Another app that I would really recommend is App Block. That's something I use as well to get super productive. You can set schedules, for example, from 9 to 5 is when you turn off all your social media and you only use productivity apps, such as your email, your actual phone to make phone calls or notes, or, you can set whatever apps are working for you. That was talking about exercise and movement. And one of the things I learned about cycle syncing my workouts to my phases is that during each phase, my body needs different workouts. So even though I've scheduled these workouts for myself, I am also allowing myself to be flexible, not to be rigid, and to listen to my body, that when I feel the need for, I can't push myself today, I can't be bothered, I just do a gentle yoga session. I'm not the kind of person that goes to classes. I don't really enjoy that. But I do follow things online. So I love yoga with Adriene. She has some really good 10, 15, 20-minute yoga routines you can put on for free on YouTube. My little daughter, she can join in with that as well. So that's something that's really, really been helpful. Now, if you want to learn more about all the other things that I've done and I've learned about during my journey, I have a book that's coming out very soon. I really wanted it to be done in December this year, finish 2024 on a high, but turns out I need to put a little bit more effort into my editing work before I send it to my editor. She needs, 2 to 3 weeks. She's very quick, but after that's done, I've got a really nice design work done for the interior of the book, so that the book looks not just like a Word document that it looks like now, but so that it looks like an actual professional book. So I'm self-publishing and I could design all that stuff myself, but I decided to outsource that to a professional, get it done in InDesign, get it done really professionally, really beautifully. And I'm very excited for that to come out. So in my book, I talk about ADHD, PMDD, the link between ADHD and PMDD, as well as all the holistic tools and strategies that have helped me in my journey. And the book is science-backed, so it's not just, anecdotal evidence, which can be very powerful nonetheless, but it's about science-backed studies that show you, what's happening in the world, basically, and what has worked for women and what hasn't worked, which is very important when you're looking to find your own healing journey. All right, so I guess we're wrapping up today's episode about the link between ADHD and PMDD. Now, if you found this interesting, please let me know. I hope this information resonated with you or it's given you some light bulb moments. I know I mightn't have explained things, to the very depth, but obviously I'm not a doctor or a scientist. I'm just sharing this from my own experience and from what I've learned, and I hope you enjoyed it. Now, last words before we close out. If you're someone that suffers from symptoms such as ADHD or PMDD, or you know someone or you recognize the symptoms in your loved one, just know that you or they are not alone and there is a way out of this. You don't have to live like this forever. What's helped for me might as well help for you, but keep your eyes open and do your research. Take the bull by the horns, take action, take responsibility, and just keep learning, keep growing, because it's a very interesting journey. And I believe we're all given these difficulties in our lives in order to learn and to grow. So thank you so much for joining me today. And I look forward to hearing your thoughts and seeing you again in the next episode. Bye for now.